Welcome to vpod.ai. This deep dive is sponsored by Stonefly. They're your trusted solution provider and advisor for, well, a whole range of things, really. Enterprise storage, backup disaster recovery, hyper-converged setups like VMware, Hyper-V, Proxmox clusters, AI servers, even turnkey security appliances like SA365, plus public and private cloud solutions. You should definitely check them out at stonefly.com for more info. So today we're jumping into absence seizures. These are those really brief, sudden lapses of consciousness. You tend to see them more often in children. We're going to, unpack what they are, what they actually look like, and some of the reasons behind them.
Exactly. And what's really striking about absence seizures is how quickly they start and stop. It's like a momentary pause. Someone might just, stare blankly for maybe 10 seconds, could be a bit longer, maybe up to 30 sometimes.
Like hitting pause for a moment?
Yeah, exactly. And then boom, they're right back to normal alertness. Often they don't even know anything happened.
Wow. Okay, so it sounds really brief, but are there situations where that short lapse could still be, well, risky?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it. If someone's riding a bike or maybe swimming, any activity needing constant focus, that sudden unawareness, even for seconds, could be dangerous.
Right, I see.
Generally, they don't lead to physical falls or injuries like some other seizure types, but yeah, that risk during certain activities is there. The good news is they usually respond pretty well to anti-seizure medicines.
Okay, that's good to hear. And you mentioned they're more common in kids. Do these sometimes, I don't know, change or lead to other kinds of seizures later on?
That's a great question. For some children, yes. The underlying brain activity, that sort of electrical pattern, might mean they could develop other seizure types down the line. Maybe like generalized clonic seizures, the ones people often think of as convulsions.
Ah, okay.
But it's also really important to say many children simply outgrow them, often by the time they hit their teens.
That must be a huge relief for families. So beyond that blank stare, what other signs, maybe more subtle things, might you see?
Yeah, the subtlety is key because they can be so easy to miss. Besides that vacant look, which, like you said, could just seem like daydreaming, you might notice they just suddenly stop whatever they're doing, mid-sentence, mid-action. But they don't usually fall.
Right.
You might also see little automatic movements, lip smacking, maybe their eyelids flutter, sometimes chewing motions when they're not eating, or rubbing fingers together, small movements in both hands, little things like that.
And afterwards? Are they confused, tired, like you might expect after some other kinds?
Typically, no. That's another big difference. Usually no confusion, no headache, no need to sleep it off afterwards. They're just back like nothing occurred. If it was a bit longer, maybe 20, 30 seconds, they might realize they've missed a bit of conversation or activity, but often no memory of the seizure itself.
That's fascinating. And the frequency, how often do these happen?
Oh, it varies hugely. Some kids might have them, just occasionally. Others might have many episodes every single day.
Wow. Multiple times a day.
Yeah.
That must really impact things.
Absolutely, especially school. If a child is having dozens of these little pauses a day, it can seriously interfere with learning and concentration. And because they're so brief and subtle, sometimes they can go unnoticed by parents or teachers for quite a while.
So a teacher might just report that the child seems distracted or is daydreaming a lot.
Exactly. That's often one of the first signs that gets noticed. A decline in learning ability, maybe grades start slipping, teachers mentioning attention problems. If you see that pattern, and maybe you also notice some of those subtle physical signs we talked about, it's definitely something to consider.
Okay, so if a parent or teacher does suspect something like this, when's the right time to seek medical advice?
Honestly, anytime there's a concern. If you think your child might be having seizures, any kind, the first step is talking to their pediatrician. Don't wait.
Right.
And if a child already has an epilepsy diagnosis but starts having new symptoms or different kinds of seizures, definitely contact the doctor. Same goes if they're on medication but the seizures are still happening. That needs a follow-up.
Are there emergency situations people need to know about, like when to call 911?
Yes, definitely. There are a couple of key things. If you see someone having what look like automatic behaviors, like repetitive movements, fiddling with things, maybe even eating or moving around, but they're clearly not aware, and this goes on for minutes or even hours,
Okay.
or if there's prolonged confusion after what seems like a seizure, call 911 immediately. That could be a very serious condition called status epilepticus. And sort of a general rule for any seizure type. If it lasts longer than 5 minutes, call 911.
5 minutes. Got it. That's really critical information. Let's shift a bit to the why. What's actually happening in the brain to cause these?
So fundamentally, all seizures are caused by a sudden, abnormal burst of electrical activity from the brain's nerve cells, the neurons. Normally, these neurons chat back and forth using electrical signals and chemical messengers, crossing little gaps called synapses. It's usually very organized.
Okay, like a controlled communication network.
Yeah, pretty much. But during a seizure, that normal electrical pattern gets disrupted. In absent seizures specifically, there's often this characteristic repeating pattern, about 3 times per second, on an EEG.
Ah, that specific 3 per second pattern.
Yeah, it's a classic sign. We also think that the levels of neurotransmitters, those chemical messengers, might be altered, playing a role in triggering that abnormal electrical firing. And in most cases, there seems to be a genetic link. It often runs in families.
So genetics plays a big role. Are there other factors that make someone, particularly a child, more likely to develop them?
Yes, a few things stand out. Age is a major one. They're most common between ages 4 and 14. There also seems to be a slightly higher incidence in females compared to males.
Interesting.
And as we touched on, family history is significant. Roughly a quarter of children with absent seizures have a close relative, like a parent or sibling who also has seizures.
Okay, so we know many kids outgrow them, which is great. But for those who don't, or even along the way, what are some potential complications or challenges?
Well, as we mentioned, some individuals might continue to have absent seizures or need medication long term. And there's that possibility of developing other seizure types, like clonic seizures.
Wow.
Beyond the seizures themselves, some kids might face challenges with learning or behavior. These can sometimes be linked to the seizures, the medication, or just the underlying condition. Social isolation can sometimes be an issue too, unfortunately. And of course, there's always that small risk of injury if a seizure happens during an activity.
It sounds like having support is really crucial then.
Absolutely essential. Connecting with other families who are going through similar experiences, finding patient communities, it can make a world of difference. Just getting support, sharing tips, finding answers, knowing you're not alone, it's incredibly valuable.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So absent seizures. They might seem small, these little brief moments, but they can clearly have a pretty big ripple effect on daily life, especially for kids and their families. Understanding those subtle signs, knowing it's happening electrically, it's all key. And speaking of robust systems, remember our sponsor, Stonefly. If you're looking for solid data protection and secure infrastructure, they've got solutions. They're even offering a 100 TB immutable and air-gapped SSO NAS right now for $8,995. Definitely worth exploring at stonefly.com. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. We really hope this has provided some valuable insights into absent seizures.